Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks so much for being here. Let's start off the week with a little quote from the Irish writer Jonathan Swift from the early 1700s. He said this. He said, besides, as the vilest writer has his readers, so the greatest liar has his believers. And it often happens that if a lie be believed only for an hour, it has done its work, and there's no further occasion for it. Falsehood flies, and the truth comes limping after it. So that when men come to be undeceived, it's too late. The jest is over, and the tale has had its effect. Some lies, however, live on forever. I was on some airplanes this weekend, went up to Portland, spoke in Astoria, Oregon. Beautiful, wonderful. Spoke at a pro-life center there. It was great. But on the journey, I had to wear a mask, of course. I had to wear a mask in the terminal of the Portland airport at all times, unless you're sitting down to eat. If you're sitting down to eat in their little, dining room, whatever place, right? You're fine. You can take it off. But I was eating, and then I had to go up. I got a fork, and I went to go get a fork. And as soon as I left the little cafeteria area or whatever, I was told to put my mask back on because it was dangerous again. It was dangerous. So then I went back to sit to eat, and then I was fine again. A magical force field is around you when you're eating. You have to wear a mask when you're standing in line at TSA, of course, but then you take it off when you get to the first checkpoint so that they can verify it's you. And then you put it back on, but then you take off your belt and shoes. And if anything goes awry in this process, you get groped by some guy. And at the same time this is happening, you're getting groped, you forgot that you had a water bottle in your bag. And that, of course, has to be thrown away. Why? Why does your water have to be thrown away? Why can you not bring any liquids on an airplane? Does anyone even ask this question anymore? Because 15 years ago, this guy, Abdullah Ahmed Ali, tried to make an explosive inside of a Coke bottle. Now, to be clear, you are not Abdullah Ahmed Ali. But it doesn't matter. You still must comply. Let me flip around. You must comply still. 15 years later. Same thing with the shoe bomber. Why do you got to take your shoes off? Because of this guy, who in 2001 tried to blow up his shoe. So now you have to take your shoe off and put your bare feet in the same disgusting mark as a million other people so you can get scanned. Still, 20 years later, we do this charade. So I'm wearing my stupid mask in the airport. I was getting arrested or something, I don't know. And I'm thinking, we will never not have to wear a mask in the airport. Think about that. You will never not have to wear a mask in the airport. Let me flip it around. You will always have to wear a mask in the airport. Forever. Forever, forever, forever. Just like you have to take your belt off, your shoes off, the whole thing. If you eat a sandwich or something on the airplane, you take your mask off, bite, and put it back on, and then chew. You gotta put it back on between bites. Spencer Clavin, his son, was on the airplane the other day, and his airplane made him exit every other row. They had to exit every other row. He said, this is because you need to maintain 6 feet of distance from the people with whom for the past few hours you've sustained a level and duration of physical proximity that you otherwise reserve for your spouse. but as we're leaving, we need to spread out safety first, of course. All right, here's the key with this. And this is what people don't understand. And we got to get to the core of this. We got to get to the root of this. There's so many people. Maybe you, probably not you, but certainly people you know. I know that's for sure. People will say, oh, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? It's just this. It's just that. It's just a little thing. It's just for now. It's just a mask. It's just a little thing. It's for, just put it, and then you don't, and we do, and it's for, and you need to, it's just for, come on, why are you making a big deal about it, Slater? This is the answer. Spencer Clavin got it. Here's what he said. The cumulative effect of this elaborate kabuki show is humiliation. It is shameful and emasculating to lurch through a series of stylized gestures that obviously make no sense. Here it is. Being forced to do irrational things, just like being forced to say things you don't believe, is a form of insult. The neurotics around us, they get this fake comfort or whatever, and normal people like you and me just get demoralized. You know what it's like to travel in an airport. It's demoralizing. And being in an airport is a little microcosm of what the ruling class wants America to be like everywhere all the time. Right? This is what happens when the government takes control of people. It turns us into like you're at the DMV. That's how they want us to be all the time. They don't like you being free. They don't like you being alert. They don't like you being moralized. So they want to demoralize. Here's what Clavin said. He said they want people exhausted, downhearted, groping in dejection for whatever overpriced comfort they can find to soothe their wounded souls. Our American oligarchs want us spiritually gelded, shuffling complacently through small daily rituals of servitude. A good reason for doing a thing is never considered, and if it goes on for long enough, no one even thinks about it anymore. Do we even ask why? Can I not bring in a bottle of shaving cream on my carry-on bag? We don't even ask anymore. We just know we're not supposed to. So we don't even, it doesn't even matter what the reason are for these rituals that they make us go through. It's just about control, because at a deep philosophical level, they are opposed to us. They are opposed to you. They are opposed to the tradition of self-government. Bottom line, freedom. There's three groups of people in this equation here. You have those who want to control. Right? There's a big group of people. I don't know what these percentages are, but there's a group of people who want to control. Then there's a group of people who want to be controlled. These two groups were made for each other. They love each other. It's fantastic for them. The problem is there's a third group. I call them the rest of us, you and me, who don't want to be controlled and don't want to control. I have no interest in controlling anyone, but I also don't want to be controlled. Now, to these other two groups, they don't get us. They're like, what do you mean you don't want to control everyone's actions about everything all the time? How could you not want to do that? And then you have this other group, the be controlled, and they're like, well, what do you mean you don't want to be told what to do all the time, constantly? How can you handle it? So there's so much anxiety. How can you handle freedom? Those are the three groups. Now, a lot of people who want to control, they go into politics, because what other realm of life can you control so many other people? So those people are politicians. Now, controlling other people, that's a sin, of course. But they've so buried their shame so deeply for so long, they've deluded themselves into thinking that they're actually serving and loving people, right? Their consciences are numbed beyond all recognition. They can't feel a thing. So there's no end to it. There's no end to their control. They think they're doing the right thing for the right reasons. And so many other people, like 70% of the state of California, for instance, where I live, are thinking, yeah, great, love to be controlled. Fantastic. Thank you for controlling me. Thank you, sir. May I have another? That's what they did with the recall a couple weeks ago. Gavin Newsom, our governor, is up for recall. 70% of the state's like, yeah, keep it up. Love it. Love all this control you're imposing on me. Amazing. Give you another example. Senator from California, Dianne Feinstein, she proposed a bill, and she wants to get this done by Christmas, by the holidays. Maybe even that's Thanksgiving. She says, in order to fly on an airplane, domestic, you need to have either a vaccine passport or a negative test. And I'll give her a little bit of credit because she's the first person I've ever heard in power talk about proof of antibodies. Right? I've never heard anyone talk about that, so I'll give her at least a little bit of credit for that. Not good enough, but at least something. So you got to show a vaccine, a negative test, or proof of antibodies in order to board even a domestic flight. And she wants it again. She wants it done by holiday travel. Now, just to go back to why you have to empty your, water bottle or shaving cream and take your shoes off and belt off, right? Why? Has anyone asked why? We don't even ask why anymore. Why do we have to empty your water bottle before you go on an airplane? Does anyone ask why anymore? Well, why do I have to show vaccine passport in order to get on an airplane? Why? No one even knows. No one even asks. I say why because how many COVID cases are spread on airplanes? No one says. Wouldn't you think Dianne Feinstein would say, hey, like this is a sane society, a sane, rational society would say, hey, everyone, there's all these outbreaks from airplanes. Look I have these studies here. Here's the studies, and here's what they say. If someone with COVID gets on an airplane, here's how many people get COVID from the airplane, right? And where is it? Where's the study? She doesn't even pretend to have that. They don't present anything. Now, but first of all, the answer is like none. It's always been very close to none, no spread on an airplane because the air is circulated a lot in a very healthy way. But now, with there's enough people vaccinated and all the rest, like no one's. It's spreading COVID on an airplane is as close to zero spread as anything else in life. But it doesn't matter, and no one's even talking about it, and they're not even presenting the evidence for it because it's all about control. And they love it, and the people who want to be controlled love it, and people like you and me can't comprehend it. It makes no sense to us. It makes no sense. Why would you want to control other people, let alone other groups of people or entire classes of people? Why is that even appealing? I could barely even take care of myself. Who you think I'm going to take care of other people or like control other people? And maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Maybe the people who do the controlling can't control themselves. Maybe they can't control themselves the most. This is interesting. So you got the three groups, you and me. We recognize we can't control ourselves. So we don't ever seek to control others because that would be ridiculous. Then you have this other group who loves to be controlled. Maybe they realize they can't control themselves to a degree, so they just love to be controlled instead, right? Get rid of the anxiety. And then there's the people who love to control. Maybe they realize they can't control themselves, or maybe they're so delusional. That's it. They're so delusional. They think they're so good at controlling themselves that they should also be controlling everyone else. But maybe deep down they know they can't control themselves. So to distract themselves from that, they seek to control other people because there's less accountability there. If I can't control myself, it's obvious. But if I can't properly control other people, well, when things go wrong, that's just their fault. They didn't comply with my orders properly. That was the problem. Not me controlling them. It was their not being controlled properly. They didn't comply. They didn't wear their masks the right way. That way, nothing's ever my fault. My local school district, San Diego, voted to mandate vaccines in kids. And the head of the school board said, we believe the science. Right? You've heard all this nonsense before about believing the science. These people are idiots. This is Carl Sagan, famous scientist, on that point right there.
Science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along.
Gonna play that on repeat every day. Skeptically interrogating, and here's my with a fine understanding of human fallibility. That's the key. With a fine understanding of human fallibility, you must be skeptical of those in authority. Because if not, you're up for grabs by the next charismatic person or political movement that comes your way and captivates your attention. This is why you don't believe the science. That sentence doesn't make any sense. One of the great scientists and philosophers, Richard Feynman, he said, I would rather, this is such a good line, he said, I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. Let me say it again, just because sometimes sentences like that can be tricky. I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. So what's an answer that can't be questioned? Masks work! Masks work! It's an answer, and it can't be questioned. But what do you mean masks work? When do they work? How do they work? What masks work? By who? When? How, right? No, you can't question any of that. That's an answer that can't be questioned. Now, usually, for a long time, it was the scientists and people on the left who would take this high and mighty position that science asks questions. Right? We're up here and we're asking questions. We're scientists. We ask questions. And it's religion that's just dogma. Religion is nothing but dogma that can never be questioned. And of course, that's backwards. Right now, it's the science that is political dogma that can't be questioned under any circumstance. And the truth is, the Christian faith challenges you to ask questions. Right? There's a part in Acts where it talks about the Bereans. The Berean Jews were of more noble character because they received the message with great eagerness and examined the scriptures every day to see what Paul said was true. They were more noble because they heard what Paul said, asked questions, and then went to confirm. That's scientific of them. Right? But it's the science today that's the dogma. Can't be questioned. And it's religion that should be questioned. And when you study the scriptures, you'll find them to be true. But you study them with zeal and curiosity. That's what science used to be, right? Not anymore. You can't ask those questions. And people don't. People don't even ask them. They don't even ask questions anymore. Why can't I bring water on an airplane? Why do I have to take my shoes off again? Wait, why do you have to show a vaccine passport to get on an airplane? We don't even ask these questions because we're demoralized, humiliated, insulted, and demoralized. This is a former KGB member. Of course, we played him before, who years ago let us in on part of the Soviet communist strategy.
Exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization.
Demoralization. A person who is demoralized is unable to assess true information. A person who is humiliated, insulted constantly, forced to go through meaningless rituals, is unable to assess true information. So we take our shoes off, our belt off, we don't bring liquids through security, we wear a mask, we put it on between bites, we dutifully comply, never asking why, never pushing back. And we'll be telling our kids one day that there once was a time when human beings didn't wear a mask anywhere ever. Just like my dad told me stories of when he would go to the airport and just walk to the gate. No security at all. We'll never see those days again. Because, as Jonathan Swift said, falsehood flies. And the truth comes limping after it. Super grateful you're watching, however you're watching right now. But friendly reminder, you can download our app in the App Store, and it's super easy, and everything is right there for you at your fingertips. Look how quick that was. And look, you can, you got Buck, you got Jesse, you got this show right here, and you can even watch live, which will be weird here. Let's see how this works here. And it's totally free on your phone, on your TV, wherever. And here's right now. This is weird. This is trippy, man. What's going on here? It's all free in the App Store. Just search for The First TV. You can watch live wherever you are. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. Today's life lesson: marriage is not about happiness. I want to make this point because marriage is obviously very important, but also, even beyond the topic itself, just so we can see the difference between the worldly view of a thing, in this case marriage, and the biblical view of a thing. Again, marriage in this case. But even if you're a Christian or not married or whatever, just to be able to look at the stark differences between the biblical truth and the worldly message, and how they're just completely night and day. Now, so I want to present the biblical view. Do whatever you want. I'm not, as per our last segment, I'm not forcing you to do anything. I'm not Fauci over here. I'm just going to lay out the differences, and you decide what's better for you, your wife, your kids, and our society at large. We're going to go through these pretty quick. This is a chart from Rick Thomas with, I think, maybe 20 differences. We'll jump around here a little bit if it's hard for you to see. All right? So the worldly view on marriage is that it will solve your problems. The biblical view is that it will reveal your problems. The worldly view says marriage will bring happiness. The biblical view is that marriage leads to holiness. The worldly view says that a marriage is good if you don't argue. That's the sign of a good marriage, if you don't argue. And the biblical view says that you get maturity through argument. The worldly view says a marriage should not be difficult. And the biblical view says, oh no, there definitely will be difficulty. Let's just stop right. Do you see already the selfishness, the selfish perspective on the worldly view of marriage, right? It should solve my problems, make me happy, not be difficult. We should never argue. Everything's going to be easy all the time. That's the worldly view. The worldly view says marriage is about feelings. The Bible says it's about commitment. The world says a marriage should be 50-50. The Bible says love doesn't keep score. The world says it's a contract that can be broken. And is there any wonder why people break them so frequently? Because they think that it should make them happy and solve all their problems and be about me, and it's about feelings, and if I don't feel good, then I'm going to break the contract. But the Bible says it's a covenant that can't be broken. The world says love until it hurts. The Bible says love until you die. The world says it's about assigning blame. The Bible says it's about accepting responsibility. The world says either your spouse or you are your Savior. And the Bible said Jesus is. And the world says all joy, goodness, and satisfaction should come from your spouse. And the Bible says it should all come from God. So, again, you do whichever you want, but let's just admit how different they are. All right? Now, let's go over what the world's view is in action. This is a New York Times opinion piece. It was published just, I think it was last Friday. And the headline was, divorce can be an act of radical self-love. Weird. So this woman's argument is that her divorce, here's what she said, freed me from a relationship that was crushing my spirit. It freed my children, then 5 and 3, from growing up in a profoundly unhealthy environment. Now you're thinking, geez, Slater, how dare you judge this woman? Maybe she was in an abusive relationship. Maybe she was being physically abused. Maybe she was being emotionally abused. And here you are going to tell her that her safety doesn't matter and she should stay in an abusive relationship. How dare you, you member of the patriarchy? Here's the next sentence. There was no emotional or physical abuse in our home. Oh, well then what? There was no absence of love. Even now, after everything, when he walks into the room, my stomach drops the same way it does before the roller coaster comes down. Oh, it's all about feelings. I divorced my husband not because I didn't love him. I divorced him because I loved myself more. Is that not exactly what we just talked about? That's exactly I could do a T. I couldn't make this up. The world's view on marriage is selfish. That it should bring happiness and solve all my problems, and it's about feelings and should never be difficult. And this woman lived that out to a T. She broke off her marriage, which is merely a contract. She broke it off because she loved herself so much. That, therefore, is not a covenant of service, which is the biblical view of marriage, is that it is a covenant of service. That is instead a contract of narcissism. Who do I love more at the moment? I love me so much that I'm divorcing you. And our kids will suffer. Now, I talked about this on my radio show the other day, and people on the Twitter said, oh, Slater, shouldn't everyone in a marriage be happy? No. I mean, listen, I want that. I want everyone to be happy. First of all, is everyone happy? So most of marriages take the worldly view of marriage. Are they happy? We have many friends of ours who have told us my wife and I are the only couple they know who is happy. They take the worldly view. We take the biblical view. We're the happy ones. Okay? Think about that. Think of the people you know in your life who have the worldly view of marriage. Are they even happy? Look at the divorce rate. Okay? Now, still, people will say, Slater, shouldn't everyone in a marriage be happy? I want them to be. But the Bible says nothing about happiness ever, anywhere. It never talks about happiness. Certainly not in marriage. A dear friend of mine was in the ICU for a week. All last week he was in the ICU. Couldn't do anything for himself. Couldn't do anything. Like bedpan, wife wiping his bottom. Couldn't do anything. And he called me, just Saturday he called me. First time out of the ICU, he called me. And he said, Slater, I want to tell you a little something about marriage. He said, my love for my wife has never been deeper because she did literally everything for me. And he explained all the things that she did for him, not pretty things. He said, Slater, these were not happy times. These were not happy times. But their love has never been deeper. His love for her love for him, and their love for God. And their dependence on God. It's never been deeper. That's the point. That's what marriage is about. So what was this woman's problem then? Here's what she said. After I became a mother, I was still the same striving, work-obsessed, domestically challenged person I'd always been. So ambition. I made choice after choice to prioritize my career. It gave me an identity, a purpose, and the comfort of knowing I could support myself. She says her husband would often say that you're not present. Sometimes physically, or like literally, she wasn't present when she was traveling for work, and also even when she was there, she wasn't really there. She was on her phone or thinking about other things all the time. So instead of solving that, right, instead of admitting that was a problem, changing her ways and solving that problem, which I had to do myself, as I am also work obsessed and all the rest, I had to focus on being present in the moment. So I had to admit it was a problem, admit it was hurting my family, change my ways and solve it. Instead of her doing that, she went all in on herself, and now she's liberated. See how liberated she feels if she ever goes to the ICU. So amazing that that's viewed as liberated, right? To be unconditionally loved by my husband and to raise our children together. Yuck! What slavery! What oppression! She said she knows of one 38-year-old newly single mother who works full-time and goes to graduate school at night, and she said with pride that she's now living in an apartment that she picked out and decorated and paid for all on her own. You go, girl! Good for you! She says, everything is my choice and I'm in charge. Super! The last line of this article from this woman says, my divorce let me live the life I was meant to, and I view that as an accomplishment. I bet you do. Feminism has destroyed so many lives. I blame the husband in the end, really. I mean, obviously it's feminism's fault for preaching this. It's her fault for falling for it. And it's his fault for marrying her. Right? The man needed to make sure that they were both on the same page with what a family is and how to raise kids before shacking up with each other. So I do blame him. We don't have time for it today, but Facebook right now is having a lot of problems because of their own internal reports that have come out about how toxic Instagram is, especially for young girls, because it makes them insecure and narcissistic. When insecure and narcissistic people get married, with the world's perspective on marriage, there's no way they'll be happy. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. I said it, Crusader. So DC is still on lockdown because of COVID and all this, right? But we got some numbers here. The number of COVID deaths in DC, Washington, DC, every month compared to the number of homicides in DC every single month. And it's about double, twice as many homicides about every single month than COVID deaths. And again, that's with COVID, from COVID. You want to talk about state of emergency? We'll just go up to Chicago. Over 1,600 people were shot June through August. And this is about normal. That's a real state of emergency. Curtis Hill is here. He's the former Attorney General of the great state of Indiana. Curtis, how are you, sir?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
Really good to talk to you. Let's talk about gun laws and gun violence in Chicago, because one of the main defenses that the mayor of Chicago and others make is that these are just guns that are brought in illegally from states like yours that don't have tight gun laws. What do you say to that?
Well, those gun laws in Chicago certainly haven't worked. They have had a homicide drain in the city of Chicago for a number of years. And what's the surprise that crime is on the rise in Chicago? If you take the funding away from the police department, guess what happens? Criminals get the message that it's open season to commit crime, and that's exactly what's happened in Chicago and other major cities across this nation.
They blame you for it because they're not going to take blame themselves, right? They're going to blame Indiana. They're going to blame other neighboring states.
They're going to blame anybody they can for it. In fact, they're going to blame the guns as if the guns get out and do it on their own. You know, this is a community that's a prime example of what doesn't work. Taking guns away from law-abiding citizens has no effect at all when the bad guys are able to get guns. And the best thing that you can do to protect yourself in a city like Chicago is to have your own firearms, because what's happened, law enforcement has been ineffective given the lack of resources that have been provided in the city of Chicago. And when you have a lack of resources in law enforcement, I'm sorry, people in the neighborhoods have got to do their own protection, and providing gun ownership is going to be the best way to do that.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember it being just shocking of how few of these homicides result in any sort of conviction at all in these major cities. They don't catch the guys who are shooting. It's crazy. I always had the perspective that, like, if you murder someone, of course you're going to get caught, but you're just not.
Well, you should get caught, but here's the problem that's been occurring in the last several years. A lot of these big cities have had district attorneys who have run for election on the basis of so-called social justice, which means they're going to right the wrongs of the social ills in the community by choosing particular offenses not to prosecute. We've seen that all over the nation, and this is a recipe for disaster. When prosecutors take it upon themselves to blanketly deny the enforcement of certain laws, including drug laws and violent crime, you're going to have the kind of results that you're seeing now. Last year, or in the past year, we've seen a 30% spike in 1 year in violent crime. That's the largest one-year increase since 1968, 30% across the country, and it's getting worse.
I was in Portland this weekend talking to some people who lived there for a long time, and they can't understand why these cities just continue to double down. Like, so that you have a socialist mayor in Portland, and they're like, well, obviously everything's failing in every way. So then they like the communist guy, right? Like, they just keep going in that direction. Why? And when will they ever turn around and maybe, for the love of Pete, elect a Republican once ever for these cities?
Well, they're getting exactly what they asked for. I mean, these are anti-Americans who are after destruction of law and order in this country. And that's exactly what's happening. Now, what you're seeing in Chicago, Lori Lightfoot's doing an about-face. She defunds the police in Chicago in 2020. Crime goes up, and then she turns around and she uses as a political ploy, we're going to increase funding in the city of Chicago for police. Now, she took the money away. Now she's going to bring it back. Why? Not because she's interested in greater law enforcement. She's interested in attempting to stem the tide of a lack of support from people in Chicago who have had enough, who want to have someone at the leadership helm who's saying, we're going to take a law and order process in place. We're going to support the police. We're going to put solid detectives in place to investigate these crimes. What's she saying? She says she's going to bring more money into the city to change the way law enforcement operates. Well, the way law enforcement is supposed to operate is to track down the bad guy, arrest them, and prosecutors lock them up. That's how you stop crime in major cities.
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't know about the Chicago elections, but whenever they are, I bet they elect someone even further to the left than Lori Lightfoot. I don't know how they keep doing it over and over. Let's switch gears a little bit, Mr. Hill, if you don't mind, to the COVID vaccine mandates and the legality of them. I haven't looked enough into this, so I obviously want your insight, where you have the federal government through OSHA mandating that businesses over 100 force a medical procedure, right, on people. Is there precedent for that? And what does a state like Indiana, what legal recourses do they have to say no to OSHA?
Well, the states have certainly legal recourse to push back on any type of federal government overreach. And if a mandate to put an intrusive vaccination that's been unproven, and that's disputable, but certainly there's enough misinformation and bad information out there to suggest that there's not good information on why someone should do this. The states can certainly file suit and file action against the federal government for overreaching. We've done it all the time, and I'm hopeful that that will be the course now. The problem that we have here is so much bad information out there. This is an erosion of the basic freedoms that you and I and all Americans have in terms of how to operate our own health and our own bodies. It's incredible to me that the federal government would push this out. I'm hearing story after story of federal employees, federal law enforcement officers, members of other agencies who are not willing to comply with this mandate. We already have a situation where we can't find people who are working regular jobs in our various states, businesses and government organizations. Now the federal government's going to come out and put a mandate on affecting 100 million people. How is that workable? How is that enforceable? And how is that right? This idea that we're going to do it for your own good, that's just un-American. And I'm anticipating a huge pushback. We're going to see thousands and thousands, if not more, Americans who are going to stand up and say, no, we're not going to take this. And it's going to be very disruptive on our system.
I hope there's pushback. I'm not as confident that there will be. I hope, though, that there's states like yours that do a good legal pushback. But the timing on that, these things frustratingly take a long time, right? First of all, we don't even know when OSHA, they haven't even issued any rules. So we don't even know when that's going to go into effect. But even then, it takes some time for this to go to what? It would go to the Supreme Court, right?
Well, when you notice, when the president issued his order, his mandate, there was no timing in terms of when it was going to take place. So part of it was just, I think, smoke and mirrors. The other thing you have to take a look at is the changing dynamic in COVID. We've seen the numbers have been rapidly dropping in the last 2 weeks. So it's ironic that we would be looking at a mandate across the board nationally at a time when it appears that the COVID is coming under control. This is all just to stir up this control aspect of forcing people into a position, forcing the divisiveness that's already occurring, and it's someplace it's got to stop. I'm hopeful that people will recognize that they do have rights to stand up and not just come up with a medical excuse or religious excuse. If you don't want to get a vaccination, by gosh, you're an American, you don't have to. You don't have to let somebody put a shot in your system. And people have the right to stand up for their own system, for their own freedom.
Curtis Hill, former Attorney General of Indiana. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Appreciate your time and insight. On the number of cases going down, 69% drop in the number of hospitalizations in Florida in the last 6 weeks with no other interventions, no mask mandates, no lockdowns. It's just the way the virus works. Coming up next, how to stand up in our schools when it comes against all this vaccine mandate and all the rest. Do that next. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, there's a fundamental divide, many, between progressives and conservatives. And one of them is who is in charge of raising your kids? It's such a ridiculous concept. Terry McAuliffe, he's running for Virginia governor again. He said in a debate the other day, I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. And it's like, well, of course they should. Because the government works for the parents. The school works for the parents. first and foremost. This is the new head of the Department of Education himself asked a similar question.
Fairly quick answers here because I want to get to Secretary Becerra. Do you think parents should be in charge of their child's education as the primary stakeholder?
I believe parents are important stakeholders, but I also believe educators have a role in determining educational programming.
Of course, everyone has a role, but who are the primaries? The parents, of course. I want to go to Meg Kilgannon. She was at the Department of Education as the director of the Office of Faith and Opportunity Initiatives in the Trump administration. She's now at the Family Research Council. Meg, how are you today?
I'm great. Mike, how are you doing?
Wonderful to talk to you. Speak about that fundamental divide between this idea of who is in charge of a child's education.
Well, it is a very fundamental and basic question, and there could not be more disagreement on this topic. Secretary Cardona did end up walking that comment back a little bit and acknowledging that parents are important, but it took him way too long to do it. That shouldn't be something that you need to walk back or something that you need to correct. Everybody should understand that parents are fundamentally, primarily, the best educators of their children. And even though we may let a school system help us educate our children, we know that ultimately we're still responsible for what's happening there, and we very much want to be involved in that process.
The government school system is so screwed up right now. We're seeing this fundamental divide play out in school boards meetings, right? But like, who's in charge here? And the parents are rising up, and the school board just does whatever they want anyway, and it's just it's a complete disaster. Do you have any advice whatsoever on how to get this back to where it should be?
Well, parents need to understand that it's, I think we do understand that it's not a fair fight. That on one side you have parents who are the parents of the children who are going into the school system. And on the other side, you have the school system itself. You have left-wing teacher unions, you have the National Association of School Boards, you have all the associations for principals and administrators, you have the diversity, equity, and inclusion cabal that is very much involved in your children's education. And group after group after group on the left is all aligned to protect their stake in the nation's education system, because they know that children are the future, and they want to make sure that your children think like they do. So we really need to be engaged in the space. Even if you take your children out of public schools, you still need to be involved in the system, because most children won't be taken out of public schools. And we simply cannot survive as a country if we have a situation where 90% of school children are being educated to hate themselves, hate their parents, and hate their country.
Wow, that's such a really, really good point. I've been saying for a long time, encouraging, advising parents to get out any way you can. Homeschool, charter school even, private school, whatever, get out. But you're right, you can't give up on it totally, because now your kid's going to be raised in a country where 90% of the people, as you said, still hate the country. And then what good is that still? You still have to stay in that fight. It's a great point. So how do you, go ahead.
There are tremendous assets at stake too. There's building infrastructure, there are salaries to be paid, there are contracts to be given, and we can't simply cede all of that ground to the progressives. That is just way too big of an asset for them to control, and they very much do control it right now. So we really must, if we want to take back our country, we must take it back.
Especially in California, I forget what the number is, but it's something like 45% is state constitutionally mandated for public education. So the more the budget goes up, that's even more and more money every year going to education. That's right. So give us one. We got about a minute and a half. Give me one actionable item that parents should be focused on right now.
Well, you can go to frc.org and download the paper that I wrote called The Concerned Citizen's Guide to Engaging Public Schools. And it will go over all of the pressures that are on public schools right now. It'll explain how the educational system is a lot like Silicon Valley, in that it's controlled by one kind of thinking. And anytime you can, parents, you must inject your voice and your worldview into the public education system. It is desperately needed there, and it will only benefit everyone when we have a true give and take and a back and forth in our public school system. So
it was only 1980 when the Supreme Court ruled to take the 10 Commandments down off the walls of our schools. So it's about 40 years before that's been replaced by transgender flags, Black Lives Matter flags, Palestine flags. I mean, that's pretty quick turnaround still.
Which is not allowed either, and we need to make sure those things come down. So do Figure out where the pressure point is in your school system and push on it. Make sure that
Meg
we're doing the
Kilgannon.
best we can for our children.
Meg Kilgannon from the Family Research Council. What's the website again to find that guide?
frc.org/education.
FamilyResearchCouncil.org/education. Wonderful. Meg, great to talk to you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day. We're going to talk tomorrow about the Virginia governor's race. Hopefully they have a better result than the recall did here in California. But you stop electing politicians who think that your kids are theirs. Should we start with that? True story. Tomorrow, spread the word.